On the horizon, the appearance of the Mongol army was a harbinger of horror for any state in the sheiks of centuries. However, everything you know about them from textbooks is almost certainly a lie. Campaign with Christians, known as the Yellow Crusade in 1256, and we will be glad that the era of their power has long passed, and never again will an army resembling a post-apocalyptic army appear on the horizon. Neither the Russian Empire or the United States were large states on the planet. This title can be held by the British Empire, with its colonies stretching from the US to India at the height of its power. However, there is another state that ranks second in the ranking, the Mongol Empire, which captures a quarter of the territory and population of the planet. What natural phenomenon do you have when you hear this name? At best, there is something connected with the immense barbarians or nomads. Is not it? History textbooks love their furniture well, because they are written by the winners. But let's think about it. Could the immense and uneducated Mongols in the 13th case capture and hold half the world? After all, we are talking about a time when locks and heavy use were commonplace. However, somehow the Mongols defeated the armed Chinese, who owned gunpowder, and the knights hardened by the Crusades. At the same time, even superior results were often encountered. Don't you think that there is some inappropriate logic here? Perhaps the point is that in Europe, Russia, and Asia, they are not very willing to admit that they are being detected, and detected by systems that were not found in what is found in the volume of the Mongol Empire. Therefore, textbooks, as far as they can, try to persecute the Mongols as barbarians. But in the next couple of minutes, we will fix everything. Get ready to learn how the Mongols of modern traffic parameters turned the siege business on its head and delivered packages at a speed that one can only dream of with the Russian post to this day. Mr. Leo Messi will help us with this. Surely his name turns out to be strange to you, and this is true, because it has a hint of Buddhism, which was already spreading in Mongolia at that time and competed with the presence of shamanism. Unlike Rome, the system of names in this empire was more complex, primarily because it came from thousands of different entities, united by a common system of government. However, back to the eyes of Leo Messi, who stands on his horse in front of the Great Wall of China in 1213. You can joke. What is the point of 9,000 kilometers if the Mongols simply captured one fortress and carried it through their 100,000 army? The Mongols weren't just backs with bows. These guys had a great heavy cavalry. Mr. Messi is armed with a sword, clad in iron lamin armor and a large square shield, which turns it on from the shooters during the assault on the fortress. The history books thought it tactfully, didn't they? They are also silent about the fact that the Mongols had a special system called nuker. It's funny that among all the armies that we talked about in our videos, the Mongolian army is the easiest to understand. 10 nukers make 10, 100, 100, 1000, and so on in decimal system. The largest army could count 100,000 nukers. But there is an interesting aspect here. All members of the 10 were relatives, as well as members who were the size of a fortress on the Great Wall of China. Genghis Khan, the ruler of the empire, acted cunningly, appeared to the Roman generals. He formed an army of close people who were ready to die for each other. At the level of hundreds, the reader of the mini competition, as 100 of our Messi's relatives, as well as guys from the neighboring village, sought to help that they would quickly capture their part of the castle. After the exchange, the boyan neighbors turned their former enmity over and became friends. Thus, an empire was formed from these small cubes. In 1206, which is considered the beginning of the Great Mongol State, Mr. Temujin took the name of Genghis Khan and issued a summary called the Yasa of Genghis Khan. In this code, the division into tens and hundreds was fixed. In addition, this peculiar constitution spelled out the duty of mutual assistance and trust. Cowardice and betrayal were suppressed at the state level. It was also about enemies. The Mongols had respect for those who stood up for their own before the important. and often they directly acquired access to the empire. However, cowards who wanted to betray their homeland were not welcomed in Mongolia. A couple of issues were settled at the highest level. One is like the driver behind taking responsibility for what happened to the driver in front. For example, if our Leo Messi is riding behind his friend and notices how his wallet with coins falls out, Leo is obliged to pick it up and return it as he watches his friend's back. For violation of this rule, even the death penalty threatened. In battle, the Mongols are literally responsible for the comrade in front. Another reason for their contentment was that by the autumn of 1213, China was practically subjugated, and this endured that the Mongols and their hundreds were given access to the desired land, peasants, and space for nomadism. Nguyen, similar to European princes, became the main one, and it belonged to him to establish life in the village and build a courier post office. At the very end of the path of Genghis Khan, it is written that the whole village should have such a transport point, in which there were vehicles for shifting, as well as transport guards. Thanks to the presence of such a post office on the Chinese wall, the Mongols were able to quickly capture the entire northern part of China. The orders of Genghis Khan reached thousands and hundreds, but they were carried out very quickly, since each warrior is obliged to obey the first order and join the battle. No one objected to income, although it was not quite fairly estimated. However, there was so much of it that it is available to everyone. As you understand, thanks to logistics and the state system, the Mongols had no problems. In their society, even the rudiments were taken into account, and local residents often gathered to discuss discussions of problems. However, it was mostly people. The Mongols were born warriors and had no memory of a life without training. From the age of 3, their mothers were tied to a saddle and rolled around the yard for hours. At the age of 5, Leo already had his own bow, and he spent several hours a day shooting practice. At the age of 10, he already participated in the hunt and felt better in the saddle than other people in their chairs. The Mongols used hairy horses, which was very advantageous. On the one hand, such a horse was not afraid of the cold and could graze on the go, and on the other hand, trained warriors such as Leo could sleep peacefully right in the saddle. This was another bonus to ensure the movement speed of the Mongol army, which was very fast. The Mongols were not backward barbarians. They had a precise frequency based on the Uyghur character system that is still used in Mongolia to this day. When storming the wall of China, Leo Messi and his comrades used Tongan siege towers, light catapults, and the famous Greek fire. After the return of China, they began to be used by all the creations of Chinese engineers, which are mandatory for the horde. By the time of the campaigns against the Western Mongols, handheld powder shells, Chinese siege catapults, and even heavy crossbows were already being used. One such crossbow served hundreds of people and were turbo damage to the defending skin. Learning was the exceptional resilience of the Mongol Empire. If someone had promising technologies, the Mongols immediately learned to use them. I'm afraid they are taken from the Chinese. Genghis Khan was actively engaged in exploration and never treated discovery indifferently. On the contrary, the Mongols pursue the enemy. The population has sudden blows, stretches the troops, the inhabitants of the ambushes, and inflict the maximum awesome effect. After the restoration of China, the Mongols produced their gaze to the west. You know how the return of the entire Middle East ended, including assassinations and other small states. At the time of admission, Genghis Khan was already dead, but our Leo Messi still has a noticeable crushing blow during the complete defeat of the Crusaders in 1241. The Mongol army annihilated the Knights of Europe in the branch in Poland and ejections. Byzantium redeemed itself by giving away excessive money. Half of Russia was on fire, half of the other was paying tribute. The Mongols evolved, armed with the most powerful Persian trebuchets captured in displaced countries, and combat tactics, combined with the size of the troops, which left no chance for anyone. On the other hand, the logistics and postal system worked perfectly. and the nomadic lifestyle met with lovers of delicious food. If necessary, our Messi can easily open a vein to drink some of her blood and continue moving forward. But what went wrong? The answer is simple, ordinary human greed, pride, and greed. Genghis Khan always personally appointed the head of the department and kept his finger on the pulse of society. However, after his death, a mess passed. In the will of the Khan, his son's heir, but the youngest son, Tului, is more demanding of the army. Conflicts for power between the heirs of Genghis Khan do not affect the action, but they definitely worry about the development of the horde. For example, the Mongol commander Kidbo, despite the death of Khan Munch and the retreat of his native troops in Iran, still decided to send part of the army to fight the Egyptians, and unexpectedly lost help, and the unprepared Mongols were defeated. Inconsistencies in management, including a repetition of cases that occurred with the fact that after the repeated destruction of the power of chivalry, the Mongols did not return to Europe. Batu, known in history as the Revolution of the European Army, returned to his homeland due to the death of Khan Ojidai and solves the need for internecine conflicts and redistributes the land. Despite this, the Mongol Empire of existence, and continuing from the greatest continuation, Genghis Khan was his heir White, who founded one Chinese dynasty, which to this day is an official part of the history of China. However, before that there was a severe civil war inside Mongolia, which lasted 4 years, which was not the case under Genghis Khan. At a time when the state had a complete mess, Kubili's mother was a Christian. Batu, known in history as the Revolution of the European Army, returned to his homeland due to the death of Khan Ojidai and solves the need for internecine conflicts and redistributes the land. Modern Mongolia is not the direct heir of the Mongol Empire, and the Chinese do not believe in including the history of the Mongol Empire in a Chinese textbook, especially regarding Kublai Khan. The question arises whether the history of the Mongol Empire should be viewed positively or negatively based on the artifacts found in the Messiah. Research in history provides various examples, including cases where the Mongols destroyed entire cities. However, when analyzing this story, aspects related to the logistics of the army and scientific advances in the field of military trauma provision are also taken into account. In addition, there are many studies that indicate that without the Mongol Empire, there would be no Western treasure hunts in China. There is also a theory that internal conflicts led to the destruction of the horde, although historians also claim that it was the plague that destroyed it. The Mongol Empire was famous for its excellent trade routes, which spread throughout the empire, just as they operated on their territory. But that's a completely different story. However, at the moment it is known that the Mongols were not the embodiment of evil, as some have described them. It is worth remembering that we are talking about a time when people massacred each other, and public executions at the stake were a common sight. Thus, the Mongols are a significant part of the history of our planet. See you, friends.